Okay, good morning.
iPhone.
I hope everybody had a good Shavuos, good Yontif, feels like a million years ago. I want to start off, this is going to dovetail into this piece. So again, from Rabbi Sachs Celebrating Life. Who best values others? And there's a lot of talk about the royals in the news. I don't know about you, but I'm not holding. I'm not holding in the royals. I did watch some of The Crown. I watched the part with Diana, those parts, because that I knew. The rest, honestly, I couldn't care about. And Arayamazen, people, this one, she coughed, and this, like, it's look, you don't want anybody to be sick, but I honestly don't care. I'm sorry. And I feel like people like, what's wrong with you? Like, I'm like, I don't care. There are a lot of other people that I know much better who are sick that I care about. And they don't care about me, so I don't care about them. Anyway, but he did have a very good relationship with then Prince Charles, now the king. So some years ago, in the course of a television documentary, Prince Charles made the famous statement that he would like to become defender of faith rather than defender of the faith. Right? We call ourselves defenders of the faith. And at the time, the phrase caused a flurry of controversy, but it deserves more serious reflection than it has received. How can the future head of the Church of England be a defender of other faiths which are not his own? One of the major things that we fight about now, obviously, is religion. And it always has been. Yet, how can a future monarch not defend the integrity of many faith communities that make up contemporary Britain? Is there a way through this impasse? I think there is. I mean, we see this, what we're struggling with this year is that, Me Too, unless you're a Jew, or all that, on and on and on, unless you teach in a charter school where they hate you. Many years ago, when I was a student, I met one of the great rabbis of the 20th century. At that time, I was at a crossroads of my own religious development. I asked the following question. I would like to become a more committed Jew, but I also value the world outside, the great music, art, and literature, whose inspiration is often drawn from quite un-Jewish sources. Must I make the sacrifice? Is religious commitment exclusive? And I think at some point, anybody who's on a religious journey has to grapple with this and figure out, how do we balance sort of like the Torah and the tradition and mitzvahs and everything with the outside world. Now, for some people, it's much less of a struggle. It's not a big deal. For other people, it's a great struggle. If you ever had, like one of those kids that came back from Israel, a shtickle brainwashed or something, and you had to deal with that, so he replied with, I think he was talking about, it didn't say it, but I think he was talking about the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Here's a lot that he wrote about when he went to visit the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who had a tremendous impact on his life. I had my first shul. I'm getting very nostalgic now because I'm now finishing my 11th year here, and it's amazing. If you can believe that. But I was 11 years in my previous job, so I'm away from there as long as I am, And so it's 11, 11, and 5. What is that? 27. So I'm finishing 27 years of this. So my very first year of my first job, 27 years ago, I had a conversation with one of the congregants who drove a Mercedes.
Mm-hmm.
I know about you. I know a lot of people like, I'm not allowed to get a German car. Truth is, I would love to get a German car because they're so good, but I'm not allowed to get a German car. And I don't even have the Holocaust narrative in my immediate family. It's just not there. But I know a lot of people, like, obviously wouldn't get a German car. And I had a conversation. They had a Mercedes and they had a Volkswagen. Right? And like Volkswagen is like the ultimate German car. Like, it sounds German. It's like, that's what they, right? And he said that he went to the Lubavitcher Rebbe once. And this is what he told me. So he went to the Lubavitcher Rebbe and he asked this question. Again, I wasn't there. I don't know if this is her secondhand. And he said the Lubavitcher Rebbe told him that evil does not exist in things. It exists in people, but not in things. So then he had heter to drive. Now, I'm not going to try and sell that. I'm just telling you. But the struggle that we have with the outside world, we have a lot of struggles. That's just one of them. But how do can I watch TV? There's a lot of inappropriate stuff on TV, but can I take all the appropriate stuff and glean from that and like kind of disregard the inappropriate stuff? Sometimes it's harder to do. I think you know where I stand. So is religious commitment exclusive? So he replied with a parable. There were once two men who spent their lives transporting stones. One carried rocks, the other diamonds. One day they were given emeralds to carry. The man who had spent his days carrying rocks saw emeralds as just another heavy weight, a burden of no intrinsic value. The one who carried diamonds recognized emeralds as another form of precious stone, different but with their own distinctive beauty. So it is with faith. If your own faith is nothing more than a burden, you will not value the faith of others. But if you cherish your faith, You will value other people's faith also, even though it is different from your own. You will know that faiths are like jewels. One is especially your own, but all are precious. Now, that should hit you like a ton of rocks, right? If only the world would learn this lesson. We have a tremendous respect. I mean, I don't like to generalize, but let's say our community, like we have a lot of respect for other people. We do. I'm not going to say, oh, because you're Muslim or you're a Christian or you're a Catholic or whatever you are. I even try very hard. Worked on myself very hard the last number of years that when teaching, and I try to refrain from using the word goyim. Even though it's a legitimate word, goyim, and it's used a gazillion times in the Gemara and the Torah, but it has taken on a pejorative connotation, and oh, you like the goyim, or go get the guy to turn on the light, or the gaita will turn it on. So that shiksas for sure is that's.
I want this. You've never thought, if I'm Jewish, I want to be Jewish, good. If I were born into a different faith and you're a religious sort of person, you'd probably be religious in that faith.
Right.
That happens to be. This is the one I got. Good.
Right.
But,
right.
Yeah.
This is what I was born into. So I don't know. This is my lot. Never. Like when I just been Christian like everybody else. But I don't have a great desire to look at any other faiths. But at the same time, I respect people who are faith, and they respect us. A healthy mutual relationship is important, which is why when we should the support that we did get, few and far between as it was in the last 8 months, was so extremely valuable, because you learned a lot about who your friends were and who they weren't. And I had a lot of people that reached out to me like, are you okay? Oh, I know your daughter's in Israel. Is she okay? It's so valuable that which, we take that for granted sometimes. So it's such a beautiful, such a beautiful sentiment. So it was a wise answer, and I've tried to live by it ever since. Many times I've met and been moved by sincere Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, and Buddhists. There's something unmistakable about people whose lives have been touched by the sense of mystery at the heart of the universe. You feel it in their serenity, graciousness, or inner poise. It could be a smile that gathers you into its embrace, or a laugh that lifts you above the pain and conflict of the world, or a love that surprises you by its generosity. Such people leave you feeling affirmed and enlarged. At a level beyond words, faith sends out its light to faith. Those who recognize it in themselves can sense it in others. Just as a painter may find inspiration in the work of artists far removed in time and style from his own, so a believer can feel reinforced by the distant echoes of the divine presence in other traditions, other lives. It does not weaken my faith to know that others find God in different ways. Instead, it strengthens my conviction that God is beyond the particularities of language, time, and culture, always surprising us by being where we least expect him to be. Far from being paradoxical, it makes a great deal of sense to say that one who defends a particular faith is best poised to defend other faiths as well. If we had to entrust our most cherished possession to someone else to guard, who would we choose? Someone surely who treasures of his own and therefore knows the value of what he has to defend. Right? So this goes into a conversation about he's going to talk now about friends and associates, and I think it's important, like with whom do we choose to associate? Makes it, and you'll see that through the course of your lives, who your friends are made a big, huge impact. And sometimes the friends, you move to where you are because of your friends, or sometimes your friends are because of where you moved. But even when you moved somewhere, you have friends that maybe you were friends a long time ago, but you're not really friends today for a variety of reasons. It could be there was a falling out, could be it's a difference of ideology, to just, paths, they go different ways, it happens. And then there's some people that you never expected would be your very close friends, and they are. Or you could be like me and you don't have any friends at all. Let's see this week's parsha. Bahaloscha is one of the, I think, and I said a couple weeks ago, I said all the time, that everything's going great. It's one of those, like, everything's going great until everything's not going great. And when it doesn't go great, it falls off a cliff in a hurry. And you always remember that because the wheels fall off the bus on chapter 11. The beginning of chapter 11 is when the Jewish people go bankrupt. And it starts a long series of chapters of one negative, like, oh my gosh, catastrophe after another. But up until chapter 11, so Bamidbar was the counting of the Jewish people. Naso is the dedication of the Mishkan and the tribes and the Nisim and the dedication of the Levium. And then Baaloscha is, okay, now we got to get ready to go into Israel. Mind you, we're still in year 2. Like we're ready to go into the land of Israel. Let's figure out how to march the encampments. How should we form? And how do we let everybody know? We blow the trumpets and the shofar, this and that. And Moshe says, well, let me ask my shver, let me ask Yisro if maybe he wants to come. And then all of a sudden, people start complaining. There's also Pesach Sheni is there. Pesach Sheni, what, all right, so we'll delay it a little more. We'll do Pesach Sheni. But now the decree doesn't happen yet, but it happens coming up soon. That once the people start complaining, we don't have meat, we don't have this, the crisis in leadership, and Moshe's reaction to these crises as you track them. Again, I would recommend reading Erica's book on Bamidbar is really, really fantastic about the crisis in leadership. And then, of course, the pinnacle of this is Parsha Shlach, when they send the spies, and then they have the decree for 40 years. But they were so close, so close. So in this parsha, it's on page 197, faith and friendship. So we did a little bit of faith and a little bit of friendship. I think that these two go hand in hand. In the parsha, Moshe reaches his lowest ebb, not surprisingly. After all that had happened, the miracles, the exodus, the division of the sea, the food from heaven, water from a rock, revelation at Sinai, the covenant that went with it, the people yet again were complaining about the food. And not because they were hungry, merely because they were bored. If only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we eat for free, the cucumbers, the melon. Remember the continental breakfast we used to have in. I mean, you can imagine like you go through like the biggest crisis in your life, and then like you finally get people through it, and they're like, "Where are the pickles?" Rabbi Wein always used to say, like, "Oh, pass the pickles." Okay. As for the miraculous bread from heaven, although it sustained them, it had ceased to satisfy them. Now our appetite is gone. There's nothing to look at but this man. What's for dinner? Man again. Man surprise. Man a la man. Mano mano. Now, this is understandable that sometimes we reach a nadir. We reach kind of like, when we're living life by rote and we just go through the motions, we do things over and over. It's possible to be like Genugshine, like I'm burnt out. It's very possible to get burnt out. There have been many, many studies and a lot of work that has been, especially since COVID, about burnout in my field of work. There's been a tremendous amount of burnout. I attend conferences. I mentor a lot of younger rabbis, mostly trying to talk them out of it. There's some that tell me they want to go into the rabbit. I'm like, please don't. Like, just for the Jewish people's sake, please don't. And you'll thank me later. Become an accountant. But the dealing with, I mean, if you think about just the COVID itself, like what everybody had to deal with and being in that, it was rough. Like if you just say the word to me, like outdoor tent, I'll start getting hives, like, yeah, I can't do it. But you can understand, like, but when and certain things I can understand, we have ebbs and flows and ups and downs. And if you look at congregational life and things like that, but when the complaints are just idiotic, when they're just mean, those are the ones that really hurt. I could give you hundreds of examples of this. I'm not going to, but I could, but I'm not going to. They're like, ugh, nothing but money. Any leader might despair at such a moment. What's striking is the depths of Moshe's despair, the candor with which he expresses it, and the blazing honesty of the Torah telling the story. This is what he says. So it's so much better in the Hebrew. You can follow along in the English, but it's really better. I'll read the verses that you translate. Yeah. Is okay. Vayomer Moshe Hashem. Lama hare osali avdecha v'lama lama tzazichem enecha lasamis ma'asakol amazer alai. The word lama hare yosa is used a couple of times in Chumash with Moshe speaking to God. One he said earlier, he said in Shemos, "Why did you do evil to your nation?" Here he says, "Why are you doing evil to me?" Okay, and he says, "Nochi harisi es kol amazei menochi liditu ki samar lei sa'iv chikecha kashrisa omenes liyanek ala damash nishbat lavasav ma'ayin li basar leseis kol amazei ki yifko alei lemor tinolan basar v'nochela lo chal anochila v'adi la seis es kol amazei ki chavet mimeni v'ata v'im kacha at oseli." See, he stops it. If I have found, well, he doesn't go through the whole thing. He says, if I have found favor in your eyes, like take me out of my misery. Oh, that's a good question. That's a very good question. It's often when we find out people talk to Kadosh Baruch Hu, it's odd. It says Rashi says in one place based on the Gemara that when Moshe spoke to Hashem, he became weak, and the feminine. Now again, it's not a sexist thing. It's just so like yeah. How'd that work out, huh? Yeah, right, right,
I'm sorry.
right. I get no offense. Like when they say no offense, he means like when they say, with all due respect, that means I'm going to say the most chutzpahdik thing ever in the world to you. So, but that's Rashi says. Okay, but
Because he's talking about childbirth.
no. It's like we say modim anachnu lach. You ever wonder about that? Let's say lecha, we say lach.
I never noticed that.
That's because your head's always down. Right? Think about that. There are times when we refer to God in the feminine. Right? Tell me all your thoughts on God, because I really love to meet her. You know that song?
No.
Is that? What's that? No. It's like not Sheryl Crow. It's Alanis Morissette, I think. Or... Again, the outside world. It's time in my mind. Okay. So every leader, perhaps every human being at some time in their life, faces failure, defeat, and the looming abyss of despair. Trust me, they do. Some show it better than others. What is fascinating is God's response. He doesn't tell Moshe, cheer up, pull yourself together, you're bigger than this. Like, suck it up. Like when your kids complain. Oh, the weeks, let me tell you, like the biggest nebuch first world problem in the world, okay? Like our kids are finishing school. Most of my kids are finished. I have one still tomorrow. And then they don't leave for camp till July 2nd. It's the entertain me complaint. I have nothing to do. What? And I just say, I can't wait till you have children. I cannot wait. Entertain. And by the way, and I say this, I've said this a lot, and I'm not afraid to say it on a recording, that people look at me and my job that way as well. I sometimes refer to myself, and it's a term that I coined. And so if somebody steals it, you know why? I am a spiritual entertainer at times. And that sounds terrible, sounds horrible, but inspire me. People have inspire me. I'm like, so what I want to say and what I can say are two very different things. But it's like, okay, Rabbi, you be Jewish for me. Like you be religious for me, but just like, let me feel good about myself. So I do. I mean, because I'll take what I can get. But here Hashem doesn't say, suck it up. He says, no. And look at the next psukim. It's a paragraph break, and it says, "Vayomar Hashem Moshe esfali shivim ish beziknei Yisrael asher yadat ki hem ziknei avishot rav v'lokachta osam el ol moed v'yisyatzvu sham imach v'yiradati v'dibarti mechasham ve'atzalti min haruach asher alech v'samti alehem v'noseu itecha b'masa'am v'lo sisa tolavadecha." He's like, I'm going to give you help. Maybe you've seen the psukim here. All right, you're struggling. Here's some help. Now, sometimes, and that's a tricky thing about leadership also, is that some people don't want help. They don't like help. They have the God complex or whatever, but help is good. Okay. It says God was saying to Moshe, remember what your father-in-law Yisro told you? Don't try to lead alone. Don't try to live alone. And he quotes here from Soloveitchik on the bottom of The Lowly Man of Faith, which if you've ever read it, you have to read it again and again to understand it, but it's a phenomenal piece of work. That the first time I gave that book to my father, I was blown away because on the first page, he had to take out a dictionary. For my father to take out a dictionary, I was like, whoa. Right. So yeah. Anyway, it's a very short book. I highly recommend reading it. If you want something good in the summer, it's not light reading, but read The Lonely Man of Faith, and they've printed it many times with notes and everything. The difference between the first chapter and the second chapter of Bereshis, called Adam 1 and Adam 2, ontological experience, etc. Highly recommend. They teach it now to all the yeshiva and seminary kids. They should study it. It's very, very, very important. Okay, so even you, the greatest of prophets, you're still human, and humans are social animals. Enlist others, choose associates, end your isolation, have friends. I keep telling myself, have friends. Although affinity groups are very, very important. I do have rabbinic affinity groups because there are a few rabbis that I can tolerate. So I had a question about something, and I just didn't have any. I reach out and I'm like, do you guys have a form for this? And it works. It helps, and we help each other out. So what's moving about the episode is that at the moment of Moshe's maximum emotional vulnerability, God himself speaks to Moshe as a friend. This is fundamental to Judaism as a whole. For us, God is not merely creator of the universe, Lord of history, sovereign, lawgiver, and redeemer, the God of capital letter nouns. I love that. The God of capital letter nouns. He is also close, tender, loving. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their words. He's like a parent. As a mother comforts her child, so I will comfort you. He's like a shepherd. Though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I will fear no evil. He's always there. Hashem is close to all Hakom. Karav Hashem l'chol karav, v'chol asher yikru'u b'emes. We say it in Ashrei every single day. And that's why I said when we say Avinu Malkeinu, when we daven on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, it's already Rosh Hashanah is coming upon us, right? She was over. It's almost Rosh Hashanah. She gave me that death stare right now. I could just shrivel it to nothing but that stare. But I could have said Pesach. But but then the way we daven to God is we say first Avinu Malkeinu. We look at God as a parent before we say our King. Because, right? But also, but then you have to think about it in the reverse. When your kids talk to you, how do you answer them? And then you say, well, when I daven to God, when I daven to Hashem, that's how I want Hashem to answer me. Now, sometimes, by the way, sometimes your child, your grandchild, your whoever is looking up to you, and they come, it's often a spouse, and they say, I'm hurting. So men are dumb. We know this. So we just want to fix things, so your wife comes home and tells you, and I do this when I coach the chassanim. I don't practice this at all because I'm an idiot. But when we coach the grooms and we do the groom classes, so they have, your wife comes home, she's having a difficulty at work with a coworker, this and that, right? So your first reaction is, well, why don't you just do this? And why do you instead of saying like, I'm really sorry that happened to you. That must have really been painful for you. It was a whole different. So imagine if you're a kid and you fall off your bike and you go to your parents. I fell off my bike and my arm hurts. Oh, suck it up. It's no big deal. Or let me see. Like they just need a hug or something like that. So if we look at HaKadosh Baruch Hu the same way, because you say Avinu Malkeinu, and here's the example of it. Hashem is embracing him. He's not saying, Moshe, you're better than this. Moshe, oh, Moshe, here's some help. Let me give you some help.
But you said as a friend.
Here he says, but here it says it's a friend, as a parent, as a shepherd, all of those things.
Is there any other time that Hashem talks? Well, any other time he speaks to me? Like this is the first time I've ever heard that.
It's hard. Yeah. I off the top of my head, I can't think of it, but I'm sure there is. But he had a closest relationship with Moshe. That's why, kind of goes that way. But I think definitely you see that God is not always the Elokim, the judgment. Not always that way. You could go back to Adam 1 and Adam 2, by the way. If you want, you read the Woolly Man of Faith and tell me what he says. So in two,
Like you said, it's so difficult.
it is, read it, but it's a small book. It's a
so
short book.
reading.
It's not
It's
bedside table reading, but it's like early Shabbos afternoon reading, not late Shabbos afternoon reading. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. In 2006, in the fittingly named Hope Square outside London's Liverpool Street Station, I've never been there, Liverpool, but I did meet Paul McCartney once, which was great. And I spoke to him about Liverpool, and he was like, "Oh, well done, well done." I had like a 5-minute conversation with him. And then when I got back in my car on the radio, it wasn't even a Beatles song, it was a Wings song.
Wow.
Right? It was like, oh, Sivet Minishimai. Anyway, it says the memorial erected in memory of the Kinder Transport, the operation that rescued 10,000 Jewish children from Nazi Germany shortly before the outbreak of the war. At the ceremony, one of the speakers, a woman by then in her 80s who was one of the saved, spoke movingly about the warmth she felt towards the country that had given refuge to her and her fellow Kinder. In her speech, she said something that left an indelible impression on me. She said, "I discovered that in England, a policeman could be a friend. That is what made England so different from Germany, and it's what Jews discovered long ago about God himself. He's not just a supreme power, he's also a friend. That's what Moshe discovered in this parsha. It took Moshe only to this parsha to discover that. He never had this, not saying like Hashem is his buddy, but that he could serve in that capacity. By the way, we should tell that about the police to our everyone that we know. I hear it every single year. Every year we have the police commissioner and the captain. They come to our shul dinner, and they're so appreciative of the relationship that we have. I have a regular texting chain with the police leadership here and just, like what's going on this, and they on top of everything, but because they understand, they said like, you know what, they said, you guys before are the nicest to us. Like you're so nice. And this is how I get us speaking tickets. Friends matter. Baruch Hashem, bli ein har, poo, poo, poo. They shape our lives. The sages believe that good friends tend to make us good and bad friends bad. Okay, what's the famous dictum in Pirkei Avos? Right, Tov l'Rasha, Tov l'Shchenev, or l'Rasha or l'Shchenev. Right, if you have good neighbors, you're going to be good for you. You have bad neighbors, right? Or aseh lecha rav, kanei lecha chaver. Right, what is the difference between aseh and kanei?
To earn a friendship.
Right, or friendship with kanei is the word like an acquisition. You acquire friends, or we call them, the family that you choose, people like that. Because usually the family you get are not the one that you would choose, but sometimes that's just the way it goes. But the friends that are your lifelong friends, and I see it with people, it's an amazing thing. That's kanei lecha rav. I say lecha rav, okay, you make a rav, you make, I can fire you, I can hire you, it's all good. But kanei is like that, you keep that like luggage, as Eddie Murphy would say. Okay, so the example they gave was the key figures in the Korach rebellion who encamped one another. They concluded, here it is, see, and the opposite direction, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zvulun, where near Moshe and Aaron, and they became distinguished for their expertise in Torah. Hence, Tov l'Rosh, Tov l'Shchenev. Here's the Rambam. He quotes the Rambam here. It's natural to be influenced in character and conduct by your friends and associates and to follow the fashions of your fellow citizens. Therefore, one ought to ensure that your friends are virtuous and that you frequent the company of the wise so that you learn from the way they live and that you keep a distance from bad company. Okay? It seems pretty elementary, but in the end of the day, it's true. You see, we have a leg up in a sense because when we're looking for a place to live, we have certain base requirements that most people don't have. My wife comments on this all the time because she sees a gazillion people every single day and her patients, and she gets into their personal lives. She's like, when people don't have a sense of community, they don't belong to something. You're just kind of like floating around and like I live a place and maybe I'll meet somebody, but there's no reason to be there. Why do I live there? I don't know, because it was nice, a good school system. But they don't have a community. Maybe it develops after that, but we start off, we don't go anywhere unless there's a community, generally speaking. And we are loath to go somewhere, even as appealing and attractive and lucrative it might be for us. But if there's no community, that's a big, big red flag. We're not going to do it. Okay. So, or as the sage says, put it more briefly, make for yourself a mentor, acquire for yourself a friend. Here it is. See, aseh lecha rav. It matters to have friends who have honesty, integrity, generosity of spirit, and loyalty. It helps to make friends with people who embody the virtues to which you aspire. I know people whose friendships have shattered this year over politics. I don't mean politics. I mean just sort of like, free Gaza politics. And because I guess every friendship has their red lines, like every family relationship has red lines, and ostensibly, but that's become, if you don't embody the virtues to which you aspire, then I can't be a friend. And families are torn apart by this. The ancient idea has been revived recently, albeit in secular context, by two social scientists, Nicholas Christakis and James Fowler, using data from the Framingham Heart Study. Of course, I mean, I'm very familiar with the Framingham Heart Study. The only thing I know about Framingham is that's in Massachusetts, and you know what company is based there? I know you know. Yeah, we got that. That's their slogan. Staples. I believe Staples is based in Framingham, Massachusetts. You learn all kinds of nonsense and stuff there. The project started in 1948, has followed more than 15,000 residents of Framingham, Massachusetts, examining their heart rate, weight, blood levels, and other health indicators on average every 4 years. The purpose was to identify risk factors for heart disease. I hope they weren't like Jews eating cholent and kugel and pishka every Shabbos morning at 10 a.m. However, Christakis and Fowler were interested in something else, namely the effects of socialization. Does it make your difference to your health whether you have friends, and if so, what kind of people they are? Lots of study, lots of social psychology studies done on this. Fantastic books. I love those kind of like pop psychology books like Dan Heath and Chip Heath, those kind of books that they write. Really, really good. The discoveries were impressive. Not only does having friends matter, so too does having the right ones. If your friends are active, happy, and have healthy habits, the likelihood is that you will have the same characteristics, and the same is true of the reverse. Think about it. Oh, we're going walking every day. Who do you go? Oh, my neighbor and I have a walking chavrusa. Ben Shaul, God bless Ben Shaul, like one of the biggest blessings in my life. Ben Shaul, he has like a walking chavrusa. You'll see him around the neighborhood every morning after davening. He walks with his neighbor Uzi, right? And that's their thing, like they walk, you know. But that's his neighbor, and that's you share the same values, okay? And it's true as reverse. Another study in 2000 showed that if at college you have a roommate who works harder at his or her studies, the probability is that you will work harder. A Princeton study in 2006 showed that if one of your siblings has a child, you're 15% more likely to do so within the next 2 years. Habits are contagious, like talking in shul. They spread through social networks. Even your friends' friends and their friends can still have an influence on your behavior. So here you have the source for the study. Connected, the surprising power of our social networks and how they shape our lives. When we on our social networks we're on, we probably deal with a lot of confirmation bias. And right, and it makes us feel better or safer, but it's not necessarily productive. I mean, I reached a certain point I just could no longer read the New York Times. I'm sorry, and I finally got my wife to like, she wanted it for certain sections, and then we came first. The first pshara was that, all right, I'll go buy you the section, the day that has the sections you want. I don't need Tuesday, and like Wednesday had the dining or the food section. She loved that. I would go out every Wednesday and buy for her, but then just get the weekend. But then the weekend went, and she's like, I can't take this anymore. And I missed, by the way, I terribly missed the magazine section crossword puzzle. I do. I was really good at it. I was really, really good at it. And which is like a great sense of accomplishment. You finished the Sunday puzzle. Like, you know, I'm not such a dope like they thought I was. Right. I can Google the answers like anybody else. No. So, so you're not really, so my wife, oh, but you got to hear what other people say. I know what they say, but I don't have to have it in my face.
You don't have to pay for it.
Right. I do have a number of friends in social media. So because and that has very, very different opinions than I have, but respectful ones. I'm not gonna be friends with, you know, literally red-handed, you know, like in your face kind of like, I'm just not gonna, because why do I need that? I don't need that scorch to be on my feet. I see plenty of it as it is. So there's a balance that one we have to find, is that we don't know what anybody else thinks or was like. We did a great we had a program for the teens on Shavuos night. We had like, it was amazing, like 22 kids came, like college kids and those who were going to college. And first was 2-part section. First, Jacob, he did like a stand with us kind of challenge where he acted like the pro-Palestinian advocate and challenged all these kids and like, how are you going to deal with it? It was so good. And they were so uncomfortable and so uneasy. It was so well done. All right. And then I had a conversation with the current college kids describing their experiences on campus to those who are heading to college next year, the next 2 years. It was a very, very important conversation and very eye-opening for a lot of the kids also. So that was, but you know, we tend to have our own, we don't know what the other is. Okay. Jordan Peterson is 12 Rules for Life. Here it is. Third time making an appearance in our Shiur. Very, very good book. Thank you. Thank you, Gail. Marshals his own experience and that of his contemporaries growing up in the small isolated town of Fairview, Alberta. Maybe I'll visit there this summer. I'll be near Calgary. I don't know how far Fairview is, but I'm going to find out. Those who chose upwardly mobile individuals as friends went on to success. Those who fell into bad company fared badly, sometimes disastrously. Of course, we cannot always choose our friends. I've met young offenders who grew up in abusive families and violent neighborhoods with little choice and little hope. They deserve our help, not our condemnation. Peterson's point, though, is that when we do have the choice, it's important to exercise it well. Sometimes we choose the wrong friends because they boost our self-image. If we have a fault and know we do, we can find reassurance in the fact that the people we associate with have the same fault. This soothes our troubled mind, but at the price of making it almost impossible to escape our deficiencies. Hence this rule 3, make friends with the people who want the best for you. That's in his book. Now, again, it's very hard to break that cycle, break that mold. I see it in a lot of different groups. Like I know that, let's say take ex-teenager. I know you would be so much better off in a different circumstance, but your friends would drop you in 1 second. And that would be like social suicide. And like, nobody's going to have any part of that. Okay. And it's very hard to break out of the mold. And you see it studies upon studies and studies and studies. If you look at the struggle, let's say within inner cities and the struggle of poverty, crime, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. To get out of that, it's very, very hard. It's extremely difficult because there's no upward mobility necessarily available to them. So again, they don't need our condemnation. They need our, what did he say? They deserve our help. Okay. In the end, this is what Hashem did for Moshe. And it ended his depression. He said, gather 70 elders who would bear the burden of leadership with him. There was nothing they could do that Moshe could not. He didn't need their practical spiritual help, but they did alleviate his isolation. They shared his spirit. They gave him the gift of friendship. We all need it. We're all social animals. Lo tov adam hayos levado, right? It's not good to be alone. Even though he says in the note that Bilam called us hein levadad yishkon. But meaning that we're alone kind of in our ideals, but not in the world, but not with one another. So it's part of the intellectual history of the West. And the fact that from quite early on, Christianity became more Hellenistic than Hebraic, that people came to think about the main purpose of religion is to convey information about the origin of the universe, miracles, life after death, and so on. Hence the conflict between religion and science, revelation and reason, faith and demonstration. These are false dichotomies. Judaism has foundational beliefs, to be sure, but it's fundamentally about something else together. For us, faith is the redemption of solitude. It's about relationships between us and God, us and our family, us and our neighbors, us and our people, us and humankind. Judaism is not about the lonely soul. It's about the bonds that bind us to one another, about the author of, and to the author of all. It is, in the highest sense, about friendship. Hence the life-changing ideas. We tend to become what our friends are, so we choose as friends people who are what you aspire to be. Think about it also in Judaism. One of the most important functions that we have in Judaism is the minyan, congregational davening, congregational activities. There are certain things which, yeah, I could do on my own. I could daven, And by the way, going back to COVID, some people loved COVID because they really felt like they could daven, but you missed the congregational life. Think about how it's fears aside, founded, unfounded, whatever you feared, whatever you felt at the time was appropriate because we didn't know anything. So whatever you did was fine. We're just trying to manage all the different everybody's that was the challenging part. But if you were terrified of going outside, you were terrified of being right next to another person, fine. But let's say once that passed, think about how you felt the first time you came back to shul, or the first time you came back to any group, like how great that was. Remember that? And we've since forgotten that feeling. Because we realized of how isolated we were. If I want to, I've said it a bunch of times, but if I want to like freak my kids out, I just start talking about the COVID days in March and April, like stop. It was a very challenging time, but mostly because of the isolation. Oh, we had Zoom. It's not the same thing. Judaism is an in-person religion. And if you look at some of the, and I've seen this because I've spoken to colleagues about it and I've seen it firsthand, some of the movements that were very, very slow to get back in person suffer terribly because they lose sight of this. Judaism is an in-person religion, and it's a congregational religion. It's a convivial religion. It's a religion where you're forced to deal with other people. It's a religion where we take the Torah literally and we walk around, everybody can get a smack at it, right? That's what it should be. So part of your life and your success and your upward mobility is, well, with whom do you associate, right? So this is to see it from Moshe Rabbeinu, because Moshe was probably the loneliest Jew in the world. He wasn't with his wife, he didn't have his family, his sons were not much to speak of. So who's his friend? God's his friend. Right? Like he's doing an application, like list your references. God. Okay, that's pretty good. God, like, what's your relationship? We're best friends. We're best friends. I'll tell you, this is real test. If anybody can quote me on this, if they watch the video all the way to the end, they'll go with this. Okay. So my kids make fun of me. I'm a sucker for sappy movies. Okay. There's a great movie, forget about his politics, but with Robert De Niro, called The Intern. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you watch it.
It's very cute.
Right? The Intern with what's her name? The Devil Wears Prada girl. What's her name?
Anne Hathaway.
Anne Hathaway, correct? Thank you, Anne Hathaway. Anne Hathaway. So he is retired. He's in his 70s, and he goes to intern at this internet startup company. And the movie tracks his impact that he has on this company. But it's about association, it's about values, this and that. It's a very, very, very good movie. And by the end, she says, like, you're my best friend kind of thing. But it's really, really like a wholesome, heartfelt movie, and I highly recommend watching it. It's probably playing on HBO, but if you can find it, it's on Netflix probably. But it's called The Intern. Okay, The Intern, really, really good, and there's a lot to learn. But again, your associations And if you think about it, like what made you who you are? Maybe because of certain friends I had growing up, or certain friends that my parents had when we were growing up. That's who made you who you are. So a very, very important thing, but we don't think of it in that sense. We talk about law school. We always think about Moshe's struggle and how Hashem helped him, but we don't look at it as help. We get looked at as instruction. But here is an instance where Hashem really gave help. And as they say, right, I get by with a little help from my friends. And there was a group when I was in camp, in summer camp, called the Yeatles. The Yeatles, who made a spoof on every Beatles song, and they said, "I get by a little help from Hashem. Gonna try a little help," right? So that's why this is it. This is Moshe. That's a Rabbi. I can't believe Rabbi Sachs didn't quote the Yeatles. Oh my God, he's busy quote studies. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see everybody, God willing, next week, and then we'll take from there. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.